The underground auction was dark, loud, and full of smoke. Strange alien voices filled the air. Bright lights flashed on a stage where cages stood. Inside each cage, there were slaves, different aliens, all scared, weak, and silent. In the middle of them sat a small alien girl. Her name was Elia. She had silver blue skin that shimmered under the harsh lights. Her long white hair covered her face, and her glowing violet eyes stared at the ground. Chains were locked around her wrists and ankles. She was called a personal slave. It meant she was trained to serve one master forever. She had no name to the crowd, only a number on a tag around her neck. The alien crowd laughed and shouted, throwing their bids. They saw her as an object, nothing more. Elia kept her head low. She had been trained not to speak unless asked, not to look up unless ordered. Suddenly, the auctioneer, a fat green alien with a wide mouth, called for attention. Next, a special one, trained and silent, beautiful and obedient. Who will start the bid for this rare treasure? The crowd cheered. Bids started high. One alien shouted, 50 credits. Another said, 70. But then, something strange happened. A deep human voice echoed across the auction. 100 credits. Everyone stopped. The room went silent. A human? Elia raised her head slightly, confused. Humans rarely came to such places. She peeked through her hair. There he stood, a tall human male in dark clothing. His hair was short, his jaw sharp, and his eyes cold but focused. His name was David Ward, a retired human soldier. He stood calm, his arms crossed. The crowd laughed. What's a human doing here? One alien jeered. Going to make her your pet? Another shouted. David didn't respond. He stared at Elia, his expression unreadable. The auctioneer smiled wickedly. We have a human bidder. Anyone else? No one dared to outbid a human. Everyone knew humans were dangerous when serious. Sold to the human, the auctioneer declared. The guards unlocked Elia's cage. She was too weak to stand, so they dragged her by her chains and threw her at David's feet. She collapsed, trembling, her hair falling over her face. David looked down at her but said nothing. He tossed the payment to the auctioneer and grabbed the chain. Can you walk? He asked her quietly. Elia shivered. She whispered, barely audible, yes. Master. David frowned at the word master, but said nothing. He gently helped her stand. She was thin and frail, her body marked with old scars from punishments of the past. The two of them walked out of the auction. The crowd watched, mocking and laughing. She won't survive long with a human. Maybe he'll sell her again. Elia heard everything, but she was too used to insults. She expected her new life to be worse. Humans were said to be clever, but cruel when angry. They reached a small old spaceship parked outside the auction house. David pressed a button and the ramp opened. He guided Elia inside. The ship was simple but clean. She stood still, waiting for orders. David turned to her and unlocked her chains. They fell to the floor with a loud clank. Elia was confused. She fell to her knees and bowed, saying, Thank you, Master. David shook his head. Stop calling me Master. I didn't buy you to own you. She looked up slowly, her eyes wide. Then, why did you buy me? David stared at her for a long moment. Then he said, Because I couldn't let you stay in that place. No one deserves to be treated like that. Elia didn't understand. She had been a slave her whole life. She was born in chains. I'm free? She asked, her voice shaking. David sighed. You will be, but first, you need to rest. You're safe here. No one will hurt you on my ship. He handed her a blanket and some food. Elia stared at it, unsure if it was a trick. She wanted to believe him, but trust was a luxury she never had. As David walked to the cockpit, Elia sat on the floor, hugging the blanket. She didn't eat yet. She just watched the chains lying on the floor. still not believing they were off her body. Why would a human do this? She whispered to herself. In her mind, a question remained. What does he really want from me? But, for the first time, there was a tiny spark inside her, a hope that maybe, just maybe, her life was about to change. Elia woke up on a soft bed, covered with a warm blanket. She was confused. The room was quiet, clean, and smelled of something strange but pleasant. This was not a slave cell. She sat up slowly, her body still aching. She was wearing a loose, comfortable shirt, far better than the thin rags she had worn for years. Her violet eyes wandered around the small room. She noticed a window showing the stars moving slowly. She was on a ship traveling through space, but where was her new master? Suddenly, the door opened with a soft hiss. David Ward stepped inside, holding a tray of food and a glass of water. He was not wearing his jacket, just a simple shirt and pants. His arm was wrapped in a bandage still, healing from the blaster wound he got when saving her. He placed the tray on a table nearby and looked at her. "You're awake. Good. You need to eat," he said simply. Elia flinched and bowed her head. What should I do first, Master?" she asked quietly. David sighed deeply. "Stop calling me that. My name is David." She blinked, confused. "But I belong to you now." David sat on a chair across from her, looking serious but not angry. "You don't belong to me. No one owns you anymore. I bought you so no one else could." Elia stared at him. She didn't understand. Every master before him had hurt her, used her, and reminded her of her place. But David's voice was calm, his eyes sad, not hungry or cruel. "Then, what do you want me to do?" she whispered. "Nothing," David answered. "Eat, rest, and when you feel ready, we'll talk." That's it. Elia didn't move. Her mind told her it was a trick. Masters always pretended at first. Then the pain would come. David stood up. "I'll be in the cockpit if you need anything. You're not a prisoner here." With that, he walked out and left the door open. Elia sat frozen. She looked at the food, real, fresh food, not the stale scraps she was used to. Her stomach growled, but she hesitated. Could she trust this? Finally, hunger won. She picked up the bread and took a small bite. It was soft and warm. She finished everything quickly, not knowing when she might eat again. After a while, her eyes grew heavy. She lay back down on the bed, but her mind was restless. Why is he being kind? She whispered to herself. That question stayed in her head as she drifted back to sleep. Later, Elia woke again when she heard quiet sounds from the cockpit. She tiptoed and peeked through the door. David was sitting, piloting the ship, looking at star maps. He noticed her watching. "You can come in," he said with a small smile. She stepped in carefully, still unsure. "Where are we going?" she asked softly. "Away from that place." "I haven't decided where yet." "Somewhere safe." David replied. She stood silently for a moment, then said, "You saved me." "But why?" David looked at her with tired eyes. "Because I saw too many people like you in the war. I couldn't save them then. I saved you now because I can't stand seeing someone in chains anymore. But I'm nothing. I'm just a slave," Elia whispered. David shook his head. "No one is nothing. You're alive. That's enough reason to save you." Those words felt like a strange song to her ears. She had never heard anything like that before. David smiled gently. "What's your name?" She hesitated, then said, "Elia." "That's a beautiful name," David said. Elia felt her cheeks grow warm. No one had ever called her name beautiful. She didn't know what to say. "You can stay here as long as you want, Elia. No chains, no orders." "You're free," David said again. But Elia couldn't believe it yet. Freedom was a word she heard. Only in stories. "And if I want to leave?" she asked carefully. David nodded. You can, but you're weak. Out there it's dangerous. Pirates, slavers, worse. Stay here until you're strong. Then decide. For the first time, Elia looked at him not with fear but curiosity. You are different from other humans, she whispered. David chuckled softly. Maybe, or maybe that's what humans should be. Elia smiled faintly, a small spark of trust awakening inside her. For the first time in her life, she felt like more than just a slave. She was Elia, and David was the strange human who gave her that feeling. Days passed on the quiet ship. Elia watched David from a distance. He was always fixing something or staring into the endless stars. He spoke little, but when he did, his words were calm. But Elia's heart still carried fear. She had lived her life under masters who smiled first, then turned cruel. She didn't know what David truly wanted. Maybe this is his game, she whispered to herself, sitting in her small room. He'll pretend kindness until I drop my guard, and then he'll chain me again. The thought made her shiver. She decided she couldn't wait for that to happen. She had to run. Late at night, when the ship's lights dimmed and silence filled the corridors, Elia moved quietly. She knew how to walk without sound slaves learned. Such things to avoid punishment. She reached the cargo bay where the small escape pod was stored. She had watched David enter it once and learned how it opened. She pressed the panel, her thin fingers trembling. If I get away, maybe I'll find others like me. Or just hide somewhere, anywhere but here. The pod door hissed open, but before she could step inside, a deep voice froze her. Where do you think you're going, Elia? She spun around in panic. David stood there, his arms crossed. His face wasn't angry but disappointed. I wasn't. She stammered. Before she could explain, the ship's alarm blared. Red lights flashed. What the David muttered, rushing to the control panel. He tapped the screen fast, eyes scanning the data. Pirates. They've locked onto us. Elia's eyes widened in terror. Because of me? David glanced at her. No, just bad timing. But if you stay here, they'll take you back to slavery or worse. He grabbed a blaster from the wall and tossed another to Elia. She caught it clumsily. I don't know how to shoot, she cried. Then stay behind me, David ordered, voice sharp. The ship shook as something hit the hull. The pirates were boarding. David ran to the main hatch. Elia closed behind. The hatch burst open, smoke pouring in, and 5 ugly, snarling aliens stepped in, pirates with heavy armor and cruel eyes. Hand over the girl, human, one of them growled. We have a bounty on escaped slaves. David aimed his blaster. You'll have to go through me. Without waiting, he fired. The first pirate dropped instantly. A hole burned through his chest. But the others charged. David fought fiercely, but they were many. Elia watched, shaking, as David took a hit to his shoulder. He winced but kept shooting. One pirate grabbed Elia by her arm, yanking her back. Got you, little prize, he sneered. She screamed and struggled, but her strength was nothing. Then, without thinking, she raised the blaster David gave her and fired. The shot hit the pirate in the side of the neck. He screamed and collapsed. Elia stood frozen, staring at the smoking weapon in her hand. She had never harmed anyone before. David shot the last pirate and turned to her, panting. You okay? She nodded, still in shock. David's arm bled, but he was smiling faintly. You did good. She stared at him. You saved me. Of course, David said. I said you're free. That means no one takes you against your will, not even me. Her legs gave out, and she fell to her knees, crying. Not from fear, but from confusion. Why? She sobbed. Why do you care? I'm just ... I was going to run. David knelt beside her, his voice low. Because I promised myself I'd never let someone like you get taken again. Whether you trust me or not, I'll keep you safe. She looked up at him, his face tired but gentle. "I didn't believe you," she whispered. "I know," he said. "That's why I gave you a choice. You can still leave if you want, but the galaxy's a dangerous place." Elia wiped her tears. For the first time, she saw not just a human, but a protector. "I don't want to leave," she said softly. "But I don't want to be a burden," David chuckled. "Then don't be. Learn, train, fight. I'll teach you." She nodded. "Okay, David." It was the first time she said his name without master in that moment. A bond formed between them, not of chains, but of choice. Elia, once a slave, had picked her side, and it was beside the strange, kind human who refused to own her, but instead fought for her freedom. The ship floated quietly in deep space, far from any planet, star, or pirate signal. Inside, the air was heavy with silence. Elia sat on the floor near the window, staring at the stars. She hugged her knees to her chest, her violet eyes reflecting the endless darkness outside. David stood nearby, wrapping his shoulder with fresh bandages. His wound from the pirate fight was deep, but he treated it himself without a complaint. For a while, neither of them spoke. But the silence between them wasn't heavy with fear this time. It was full of thoughts neither could express. Finally, Elia broke the stillness. "David, ... He turned his head, waiting. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." She took a breath, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you really buy me?" David sighed and sat down across from her. "I told you. Because I didn't want anyone else to own you." Elia shook her head. "But why do you care? You're a human. Most humans. They just look away. I've seen them at auctions. They pretend they don't see us." David's eyes darkened with a memory. "Because I've seen too many lives destroyed by chains. During the war, I was a soldier on the front lines. I saw soldiers enslave, burn, and kill without thinking twice." He paused, then added quietly, "And I did nothing to stop it. I told myself it wasn't my problem, but it was. Every scream I ignored ... It's still in my head." Elia watched. She expected pride from a soldier, but all she saw was guilt. "When I saw you on that stage," David continued, "I saw the faces of those I left behind. I couldn't save them. But I could save you." For a long moment, Elia said nothing. Her fingers traced the old scars on her arms. Then, slowly, she spoke. "My people. We weren't born to be slaves. We had a world. A peaceful world." Her voice cracked, but she kept going. "The raiders came when I was a child. They burned our cities. My parents tried to hide me, but the soldiers found us. They killed them in front of me." David's fists clenched. "I was taken, sold to different masters. Each one worse than the last. I was trained to obey, to smile, to serve, to forget who I was." She looked up at David, her eyes shimmering with pain. "After a while, I stopped remembering my parents' faces. I stopped dreaming. Because dreams hurt when you wake up still in chains." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I stopped being Elia. I was just property. Until you." David's chest felt heavy. He wanted to say something, but no words felt. "Enough. I don't know how to be free, David," she said. "I don't know how to live without waiting for orders. Without fearing the next punishment." David leaned forward. "You don't have to know yet. We'll figure it out together. You'll heal, and I'll help." Elia looked away, her throat tight. "I don't even know who I am anymore." David smiled gently. "You're Elia, and that's a good start." For a moment, Elia chuckled, softly wiping her tears. "You're strange, David. Kindness is dangerous in this galaxy." "Then I'll be dangerous," David said with a grin. Elia shook her head, but a small smile played on her lips. They sat in silence again, but this time it was peaceful. Two souls carrying their own broken pasts, sharing the same quiet space. Then Elia asked, "Why did you leave the war?" David's eyes grew distant, because war didn't change anything. We fought, killed, and bled, but the galaxy stayed cruel. I was tired of pretending I was doing good. I wanted to disappear. He looked at her. But now with you here, maybe disappearing was never the answer. Elia blinked. Then what is? David smiled. Maybe. Creating something better. Even if it's just between two people. That night, Elia didn't sleep on the floor. She asked to sit in the cockpit with David. They watched the stars together, the silence no longer empty. For the first time since her parents' death, Elia felt something fragile inside her, not hope, but the possibility of it. And that was enough for now. Days turned into weeks aboard the small ship, floating between stars. The emptiness of space was no longer cold for Elia. It was quiet, peaceful, a freedom she had never known. She started waking up without fear, without waiting for an order or punishment. Every morning, she found David already awake, fixing the ship or reading old data files. One morning, she gathered courage and asked, "Can you teach me how to fly the ship?" David looked up, surprised, then smiled. Of course. That was the start of her new life. David taught her slowly, with patience she wasn't used to. He showed her how to read star maps, how to control the engines, and how to scan for dangers like pirates. At first, her hands trembled at every control. She was scared of doing something wrong. "I'm sorry. I'll try again," she would say, expecting anger, but David would simply nod and say, "Good, let's try again together." Each time, her confidence grew. At night, they shared stories. Elia spoke of her home planet, though her memories were scattered and broken. David shared tales of Earth, of blue skies and green forests, things Elia had never seen. One night, as they sat in the cockpit watching a passing comet, Elia whispered, "I wish I could see Earth." David chuckled. "Maybe one day. If they'll even let me back." "Why wouldn't they?" she asked. David's smile faded. "Because I left. I abandoned the military, the system, everything. Sometimes, Earth doesn't welcome those who walk away." Elia stared at him, then said softly, "Then I won't let them turn you away. We'll see it together." David looked at her, really looked. She wasn't just a frail, scared girl anymore. There was strength building inside her eyes, like a flame struggling to grow. But the galaxy wasn't kind to such flames. On one trading stop, when they docked at a neutral space station, whispers began. Aliens stared at Elia, her skin, her eyes, and sneered. "A slave pretending to be a pilot," someone muttered. "A human keeping his pet," another sneered. David heard it all, but he ignored them. Elia, however, felt the weight of every glance, every cruel word. "Why do they hate me so much?" she asked when they returned to the ship. David sighed. "Because you're different. Because they're afraid of people who break their roles." "I'm trying to change," Elia said, her voice tight. "But maybe I'll always be a slave to them." David knelt in front of her. "Not to me, not to yourself. Their words don't decide who you are." She looked into his eyes and asked, "Then who am I, David?" He smiled gently. "You're Elia, my co-pilot, my friend, and more than anyone I've met in a long time." Her heart skipped. No one had ever called her a friend before, but she also saw the pain in his eyes, the loneliness he carried, hidden beneath his strength. In that moment, she made a quiet promise to herself. She wouldn't just be someone David rescued. She wanted to stand beside him, not behind him. The next day, she asked him to train her in combat. "I want to fight," she said. "I don't want to hide behind you when danger comes." David raised an eyebrow but nodded. "Okay, but be sure. Fighting isn't easy. It changes people." Elia's eyes were steady. "I've already been changed by others. This time, I want to change by my choice." They trained in the cargo bay, her learning how to hold a weapon, how to defend herself, how to stay calm. She was clumsy at first, but every time she fell, she got back up. David watched her with quiet pride. One evening, after a long day of practice, they sat together in the common room, eating simple food. "You're getting stronger," David said. Elia smiled faintly. "Because I have something worth fighting for now." "What's that?" "You," she said honestly. "This life, the stars. The feeling of waking up without chains." David stared at her, then looked away, a little smile on his lips. "Careful, Elia. Keep talking like that, and you'll make me soft." She laughed, a sound she never thought she'd make again. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving. She was living, and slowly, a bond was growing between them. One forged not by chains, but by choice, trust, and something neither dared to name yet. Hope. The stars outside the ship were calm, but inside David felt uneasy. He couldn't explain why, but something in his gut warned him peace wouldn't last. Elia noticed his quietness as they reviewed star maps in the cockpit. "What's wrong, David?" she asked. David didn't answer right away. His eyes scanned the navigation screens, checking for any signs of pursuit. "Just a feeling," he muttered. "Like someone's watching us." Elia shivered. She still remembered the pirates, the cold laughter, the smell of smoke. Later that night, while Elia slept, David stayed awake in the cockpit. Then a sharp beep pierced the silence. An alert. "Unknown vessel detected." David's heart tightened. He magnified the image on the screen, a large black ship, twice their size, moving fast toward them. But it wasn't just any ship. David recognized the symbol on its side, a red claw. "No, not them," he whispered. He rushed to wake Elia. She stirred, blinking sleepily. "Elia, get up, we've got trouble." She sat up quickly, her training making her alert. "What is it?" "Someone I hoped we'd never see, your former master." Elia's face turned pale. She swallowed hard. "You sure?" "The ship belongs to him. And he's found us." The ship's come buzzed. A deep, cruel voice echoed through the speakers. "David Ward, I know you have something that belongs to me, the slave girl. Hand her over, and I might let you live." Elia trembled, but David's voice was steady. "She belongs to no one. You'll have to come and get her." "Oh, I will," the voice replied, mocking. "And when I do, I'll make you both regret defying me." The transmission ended. The enemy ship was closing in. "We can't outrun them," David said. "We'll have to fight." Elia looked at him, fear and determination in her eyes. "Then I'll fight too." David paused, staring at her. "You're sure?" "Yes. I'm not that weak girl from the auction anymore." David smiled proudly. "Then let's make them remember that." They prepared the ship's defenses. David gave Elia a blaster, checking it carefully. "Stay close, watch my back." "I will," she promised. The enemy ship docked forcefully, shaking the walls. The airlock hissed open, and dark-armored soldiers stormed in, weapons raised. David fired first, sharp and precise. Elia stayed beside him, shooting carefully, remembering everything he had taught her. But then, the master himself stepped through the smoke, a towering alien with gray skin, eyes black as night, and a wicked grin. "There you are, my lost pet." He sneered at Elia. She gripped her blaster tighter, but froze for a moment. His voice brought back memories, chains, punishments, endless fear. "You don't have to listen to him," David said firmly. The master laughed. "She was born to obey. She'll come crawling back once you're dead, human." David raised his weapon, but the master was faster. With a brutal strike, he knocked David aside. "No," Elia screamed. The master grabbed her arm roughly. "Let's go home, little slave." But something snapped inside Elia. She remembered David's words, "You're free." She raised her blaster and shot the master point blank in the leg. He howled in pain and let her go. "I'm not your slave," she shouted. David, regaining his footing, fired again, hitting the master in the chest. He stumbled back, wounded but still alive. "This isn't over." The master growled, retreating with his soldiers. You can't hide forever. The enemy fled back to their ship, the docking seals releasing. The ship vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind smoke and silence. Elia collapsed to her knees. Shaking, David rushed to her, kneeling beside her. Are you hurt? He asked, voice full of concern. She shook her head, tears in her eyes. No, but I was scared. I thought I'd freeze. But I didn't. I fought back. David smiled gently. You did more than that. You stood up to the person who broke you once. That takes real strength. Elia looked up at him, her eyes soft but fierce. Because of you, David, you made me believe I could fight. David shook his head. No, Elia, you did that yourself. They sat there together, exhausted but alive, but they both knew. This was just the beginning. The master would return. The galaxy wasn't done with them yet. Still, for the first time, Elia didn't feel powerless. She felt something stronger. She felt ready. The ship drifted quietly among the stars. The battle was over, but the tension still lived in the air. Elia stood by the window, watching the dark of space. She wasn't shaking anymore. Not from fear. She was thinking about her past, her pain, and her future. David was fixing a broken control panel nearby, his shoulder still bandaged but his hands steady. Every so often, his eyes drifted to Elia, worried but patient. Finally, Elia spoke without turning around. I never thought I'd still be alive right now. David looked up. Neither did I, honestly. She chuckled softly. You saved me ... again. David stood up, brushing dust from his hands. You saved yourself too, Elia. You didn't. Let him take you. That was your choice. She turned to face him, her violet eyes clearer than ever. But I don't want to keep running, David. I'm tired of being someone's property. Tired of always hiding. David nodded slowly. Then let's stop running. We'll find a place they can't touch us. I'll help you build a new life. I promise. Elia stepped closer. I don't want to build it alone. David's eyes met hers. He wasn't sure what she meant at first, but the look in her eyes, steady, bright, told him. What are you saying, Elia? He asked gently. She smiled, a little nervous but sure. You didn't just save me from chains, you gave me a life, a choice. And I choose ... to stay with you. Not because I owe you, but because I want to. David's heart beat heavier. You don't have to feel like you owe me anything, he whispered. I know. That's why this is my choice, she replied. She reached out, her hand trembling slightly, and held his. I want to be with you. Not as a slave, not as your co-pilot, but as your wife, if you'll have me. David stared at her hand in his, then at her face. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, a slow, genuine smile spread across his face. I can't imagine anything I'd want more, he said softly. Elia laughed gently, her cheeks flushed with warmth. For the first time, she felt not just free, but wanted. David squeezed her hand, then pulled her into a hug. She stiffened at first, the habit of fear, but then melted into his arms. We'll make a home together, somewhere far from all this, he said into her hair. I'd like that, she whispered. They stood like that for a while too. Souls scarred by the galaxy, yet finding peace in each other. Later, David worked on repairing the ship's communications. What are you doing? Elia asked. Sending a fake signal. One that makes them think we're heading one direction, when really we'll go the other way. She grinned. Clever human. He chuckled. Gotta keep ahead of the bad guys. Wife-to-be. Her cheeks flushed again at those words. Say that again, she said shyly. Wife-to-be, David repeated with a smirk. Elia giggled, a sound that felt new and right. It feels nice when you say it. Then I'll say it every day, David promised Dot as the ship powered up. Ready to jump to hyperspace, Elia sat beside him in the cockpit. Together, they watched the stars align before them. She reached for his hand, and he took it without hesitation. Where to? She asked. Anywhere we want, David said. Because no one owns us. Not anymore. And with that, the ship leapt into the stars, leaving behind a past of chains, pain, and fear. In the heart of the galaxy, where power ruled. And kindness was rare. A human and a former slave created something stronger than both. A bond built on choice, respect, and love. Elia wasn't just free, she was home.